Hello and welcome. In this short tooltips video, I'm going to walk you through the QA/QC toolbar in LP360. The QA/QC toolbar is one set of tools that we have in LP360 that's focused on letting you organize your review of your data and making edit calls or identifying areas where there's issues that need fixing, that need some remediation or some recovery effort. So to do this, we have a set of tools that let you define your own custom issues list. Most users typically have their own set of anywhere from a half dozen to a dozen, maybe more specific types of issues that the reviewer is checking for. So we let you define that list and share that across the team so everybody's working from the same definition of issues. Navigate across the project in a managed way with a fixed step size at a fixed scale so that you're consistently looking at the data in the same way for each reviewer. Make edit calls, identify areas where there's problems by drawing a rectangle or a circle or a polygon or highlighting that area. Enter some notes and comments on the edit call, and then use our feature analyst tool to be able to sort those, because if you're doing a large project QA/QC, you may end up with very large lists of areas that need some work doing. So we have some tools that let you filter and focus those lists down onto the critical areas or particular types of problems that someone is looking to review. And then, of course, you can export that as a shapefile if necessary, if you want to pass these problem areas on to a downstream workflow or over to someone who's not working in LP360, maybe working in another software package. So with that, I'm going to hop over to LP360. I'm going to use a airborne LiDAR data set for this example. This is some data from the US from the 3DEP program. It's actually fairly old data. You may have seen this before if you sat in on any of our webinars. It's the air around Nashville, Tennessee, as part of the Tennessee statewide data collect. So I've got a section of the data loaded. We can see that downtown Nashville is over here. The airport is over here. It's a fairly large area. The data has been classified in some areas, and now I'm going to go through and show you the QA/QC toolbars at different sections across this. Of course, I'm not going to QA/QC the whole area. I just want to show you for some examples of how the tool set works. So this is the QA/QC toolbar. It's accessed if you haven't used it before under View. You can just bring it up, QA/QC toolbar. And there's a variety of different tools here that I'll walk us through. The focus with QA/QC, as I mentioned, is making those edit calls, identifying areas where there's a problem that someone has to go fix or look at and approve or do some remediation on. So where we're actually going to start here is with our QA/QC issues editor. So I'm just going to bring that up. We realize that users typically have their own set of issues or their own way of describing or capturing issues in their is bad ground, but you may have different ways you want to uh, uh, qualify that or describe that. So you do have the ability to create your own issues list. There's a short default list that comes out of the box with LP360, but most users will come up with their own issue list. This is just a generic one I've got here for examples, of course, not really very specific on the problems. It's very easy if I just want to add my own issue. I can come in here, give myself an issue name. Maybe I'm doing power lines and I want to do, danger tree encroachment, or maybe I'm doing road work and I need edge of curb issue. Whatever I want to add here, I can define that issue type and characterize it in terms of a color and weight of the polygon that will be used to highlight it. I can have as many issues of these as I like. I can basically export or save those issues list. I can transfer that issues list to anyone that's working on the project or anyone that's using LP360 in my organization. So I have a standard set of lists. We do have some legacy issues, which you can add back in if you want. And if you want to edit or remove issues, it's very simple. It's a very simple tool, just basically letting you standardize your issues. So we'll stick with this sort of generic list for now. Once you have an issues list, you need to define a layer in your map. So we're going to add a layer in here to capture our edit calls. And I can do that just by specifying here, I'm going to create my QAQC shapefile. It will be created as an actual shapefile as a feature layer in my map. And I'm just going to put this in a temp directory for now. And we'll just call it demo edit calls. All right. So you can say I've added a layer in here. I do have another layer we'll look at a little bit later. I have added an edit layer in here with all of my different issues for my issue list. It's also flagged as the active layer that I'm working with. You can have multiple edit layers in your map. General best practice is to simply have one, but you can have multiple. For instance, this could be segregated out by particular person that you want working on the data, or different ways that you can organize it. We're just going to work on this one. So now the actual flow of the user performing the QA/QC. I'm just going to zoom right in on the map here. And I might have a particular scale that I want the data being reviewed. I always want my editors or my reviewers looking at the data from the same perspective, the same scale. Uh, you don't want them zoomed in so far that it's going to take them forever to walk through the project. You don't want them zoomed out so far that they're going to miss details or whatever. So I may have a standard that I've set. For instance, let's say we want to do this at 1 to 5,000 scale. May I've decided that's what's appropriate for this project or for my review in general. So I can set that sale specifically there. And now I can move around the map using a set step size. And we manage that here with this jump section here at the left side of the toolbar. So I have a little jump icon so I can jump the map a fixed amount, keep the scale the same, and I can choose, we do it as a percentage, I can jump 25% of the view, 50% of the view, which is very common because that gives you overlap between your two step sizes, or I can do a full 100% shift of the data. We'll just put it at 50% now. And so the way that the user navigates, the reviewer navigates through the data is they can go into their jump mode. Now they'll get the little jump icon and they can go in any of the directions that they want. For instance, a very standard approach, of course, is to do a checkerboard, east, west row, down a row, back along the row, back down a row, back along the row, so forth. But that's, of course, open to how you want to do it. But basically, I can just click on the east side of the map here, and it will step me over that 50%. And I can just keep going in that direction until I reach the end of this row, and then I can transition down a row. So it gives the reviewer control over the method in which they step through the project, make sure that they're looking at everything at the right scale to spot the errors that they're trying to spot. Now, to make actual edit calls, let's say I found an issue here. And again, I'm not really focusing too much on the specific issues. This data set's actually pretty good. There's not a lot of issues in here. I'm just basically going to make some up for the demonstration here. What you do is there are three different ways that you can add an area of interest or an area issue or an edit call. Everybody's got their own different names for it, and they're very standard. You can just draw a rectangle around it. You can do a circular call out, or you can do a polygon if you've got a more complex area. So let's just go start with the basic rectangle. Say there was an issue down here. I can draw my issue here. It's going to pop up the issue list for me. So this is where I can select from that custom list that I've created. And let's just decide that this was something where maybe we had a surface model bust or something like that. And I can add some comments in here. Bridge deck needs to be removed. And click OK. There may be other issues in this area. Maybe there's some issues with the ground classification over here. I noticed that. I probably would be zoomed in a little bit closer, of course, but I'll just highlight out this area. This needs more ground cleanup. Let's say low vegetation issue, and click OK. I can then go back to navigating through the project in my defined steps. I'll keep going till I find a particular issue. Maybe there's another issue here. And come in, I'll do the circular one here just so you've seen all three. And let's just say this is again, let's just say ground cleanup. No need to put a comment in that one. So you get the general idea here. You can, as the reviewer, you can step through the project. You can be making these edit calls as you spot issues in the data. We'll talk about fixing the issues just a little bit at the end. Of course, as the reviewer, I could be going in and fixing these issues, but depending on how you've got your organization set up, sometimes the reviewer is just making the edit calls. They're identifying the issues and it's going back to the original technician or perhaps a different technician to make the edit. So you could be cleaning up the data as you're going through here. But we'll assume this is the scenario where you're going to pass these along to another user, either back to the original technician or a different technician to edit. Now you can synchronize this, of course, with some of the other views. If I want to have my perspective view, I can have that up in my 3D window here. All right, so obviously, again, from a review point of view, sometimes the reviewer wants to get a little bit better look at to try to interpret what they're looking at, so forth. And I can synchronize those as I step through as well. And I can do the same thing with my profile view. So it's an effective way to review the data. Once you have built up this list, or once you have completed the review, we'll have a more extensive list of edits of call. So I'm going to just switch layers. I've got a previous layer that was created that's got significantly more edit calls on it, just for purpose of example here. So now you can select the layer in the map, and you can use our feature analyst, which is accessed just with a right click on the layer. And feature analyst basically gives us a list of all of the features on that layer, as you would expect. So here's a set of some 25 edit calls that have been made across this data set, just for purposes of example. And these columns are all sortable. They can be filtered and they're searchable as well. So for instance, if I wanted to group these by issue type, I can sort by issue type. I can see where my different issues are, if I'm looking for critical encroachments, I can see those quite easily. Um, the comment field is used fairly extensively to capture, for instance, priority information, which is maybe something that the user wants to convey when they're making the edit call. You could also have issues that are like priority one issues, priority two issues. So you could capture priority in the issue list, or you can capture priority in the comments. Here in this example, we've put some priority in the comments. So for instance, I could come in here and use my filtering. I can filter on my comment field, and I'm looking just for all my critical calls, things that need to be fixed immediately. So that will filter the list down to just the ones that the reviewer designated as critical. This window, the feature analyst, is interactive with the map. And what you can do is you can use the tools here to center on or navigate to each of the issues in the list as you move through the list. So what I'll do is I'll move this onto the other screen so we can see the map, but all I will be doing is stepping through these three critical issues that I've filtered my list down to. So if we go to the first one, we can see that it drives in on this area. I'll just zoom in. Okay, so I can see my issue here. This one was a needs ground cleanup, and the reviewer had said critical data may be bad. That's just for example, of course. I can keep navigating through my three critical issue lists. I can go to my next one. This is more ground cleanup, just flagged as critical, lots of issues in the area. Again, depends how much you want your reviewers to convey. And then my third critical issue is one over on actually just on the far east side of the project, and it's a surface model bus that needs fixing. Again, those are just for example. There's not really many issues in this data set. Um, but all I was doing there was using my navigation controls to navigate through it. So you can see that you can use Feature Analyst once you have your issues identified with the QA/QC toolbar. You can use Feature Analyst to navigate through them. And there's very creative ways that users will use this tool set. You can put assignments in the column. Matter of fact, if I clear this, I think there was one on here. Yeah, for instance, here's one been assigned to Mark. So there's a particular type of issue that Mark is good at fixing or needs his expertise to fix. We can put them in here. Mark can come in here and he can just go find any of the ones that have his name on them and go fix those issues. So it's a very flexible way to manage these lists of issues when you have them across large data sets. Okay, so let me zoom back out here. There are tools that will let you delete an issue. Of course, you may enter an issue and then it may get fixed, or the technician may decide that it doesn't need fixing, or there may be various reasons. But you can, of course, delete your issues. You can edit issues if you've already created an issue. You can go in, change the comments, and so forth. So you do have some flexibility there as well. As I mentioned, you can synchronize with your different views, so your profile view and your 3D view, which is very useful for the reviewer for visually looking at the area. That's essentially the core of the QA/QC toolbar. It of course ties in very nicely with two of our other systems. um, for Because generally if you're working with a point cloud, and there's an issue, you're going to go in and do some editing of the point cloud. So we do have a whole set of manual editing tools. Let me just bring these up here. So there's a whole other toolbar. We won't go into any detail on these, but we have a set of tools where you can edit the classification of points, because that's typically what you're cleaning up. So you can go in and clean up your ground class, remove points from ground, add points to ground, and so forth. But you don't really want to be doing a lot of manual cleanup. You preferably would use our point cloud tasks, which are essentially scripts or macros. I've got a large collection of tasks here, but I'll just show a couple of them here. So here's a ground cleanup um, point cloud task, which is again is a macro. And for instance, if I was cleaning up, let's zoom in on this area here, where I need to do some ground cleanup. I can use my point cloud task, which is essentially, again, script or macro. And I can come in here and say, okay, I want to run this inside a polygon. And I could select this polygon, but I can also just draw my polygon around here. And that will do a more automated cleanup. Essentially, it's running a ground cleanup task similar to doing ground classification on that. So the technician that's actually going to clean up the edit calls has the usual options of being able to run a macro or certain cleanup macros you may have built or developed for particular issue types, or of doing manual cleanup and going in and actually manually editing and cleaning up the data. And then if they wanted to, they could go back and update the notes on that particular issue. Again, everything's captured in Feature Analyst, so they could edit it in here. Again, some users will have a pass fail flag in here as well, in the comment section, or they can edit it from here in the map. So that's the QA/QC toolbar. It's an effective way to navigate through your project and make edit calls or identify areas where there are issues. Those issues can be customized to your own issue list, your own issue catalog, and that catalog can be standardized across your team. And then, of course, it ties into our cleanup tools, whether those are manual cleanup or automated cleanup through a point cloud task. Thank you.